Well, better late than never, I suppose. These are my top 10 movies of 2013. Before I go any further, a few honorable mentions. These are movies that might have been on my list if I saw them, but I haven't gotten a chance to see them yet. Doesn't mean I won't, but these movies, I hear really good things about them. The only reason why they're not on my list is I just haven't seen them. And, you know, the basic disclaimer about these things, my personal choices, not universal choices. If you disagree, that's fine. As a matter of fact, I want to hear about it. Number 10. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Admittingly, the appeal of this movie is the character, and it really comes down to whether or not you know someone like this, or maybe you are very much like Walter Mitty. If that's the case, then this movie is definitely for you. The film offers a fun look at where a character like this goes when he zones out. You see all the dream sequences from the really small ones, like what he wish he would say to his boss, to big ones like a huge superhero action sequence. And for people like this who zone out, believe me, this is pretty accurate. I do think that the dreams could have paid off a little bit more dramatically, but they do help illustrate that once you start living life instead of dreaming about it, then these daydreams will become less. The cinematography is gorgeous, and the soundtrack is a nice compliment. Still, I think the most important ingredient to the success of this film was Ben Stiller's passion. You can see that in his portrayal of Walter Mitty, as well as his direction. At number 9, Monsters University. This one, I will admit, is more of a personal choice. It's not nearly as good as the first one, and certainly Pixar's done better things, but they've done worse things too. What really grabbed me about Monsters University is the same thing that grabs me in any Pixar movie, just how well they present the real world through a fake world. Everything at this Monsters University is very similar to what you see in college. Everything looks great at first, and you're so excited. But then there's a lot of pressure put on you. Pressure to fit in, pressure from weird people that you just want to get rid of, pressure to do well in your program. The movie really captures what it's like to go to a school like this. Now, of course, there's no such thing as a Monsters University, but Monsters University is kind of supposed to stand for an acting school or a dancing school, where you have some people who are just so dedicated and want so badly to make it. But after a while, they run up into the limits of their talents. Maybe they were misled by someone who thought that they were better than they actually were, or led them to believe that they were better than they were. The conflict between accepting your reality and pursuing your dream is a timeless one, and I think the movie embodies that extremely well. At number 8, American Hustle. I'm pretty sure this movie is on a lot of people's lists, and for good reason. It's not often that a Scorsese film not done by Scorsese does well, but this movie is an exception. Though a lot of the success, if not all of the success, is owed to the all-star cast. That's right, the all-star cast of Batman, Lois Lane, Mystique, and Hawkeye. Apologies to Bradley Cooper, who has never been in a superhero movie, but in this film, he is awesome! Christian Bale once again transforms himself physically and mentally for the role of this expert con artist who, despite not being the most attractive man in the world, is able to get what he wants and has a certain confidence that attracts Amy Adams' character. Oscar nominee Amy Adams should be Oscar winner for this film. She plays a character that is very smart, very seductive, but also very vulnerable. If we look beyond the great performances, we can see a movie that has a lot of genuine humor, but also a lot of genuine tension, including a scene with a surprise cameo that I will not give away. And the film does offer a refreshing look at political corruption. If you're wondering why this movie falls so low in my list, it's only because it's not my type of movie. I don't really get into all-star cast movies, only because when you have that much talent in a movie, you feel like every single character needs to get a big emotional scene, and while they're done well, I do feel like the movie is a little bit too busy and a little bit too crowded. Yet, if my complaint about a movie is that there's too much talent, I'll take that over the opposite any day. At number 7, The Great Gatsby. Now let's get something very, very clear. I do really like the F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, but I'm not one of those Fitzgerald worshippers. Now, you could argue that some of the casting choices were kind of The one casting choice that counts, Leonardo DiCaprio as Jay Gatsby. Talk about a well-layered character, filled with charm, sophistication, and smarts, but also very, very scared, very, very dangerous, and maybe a little bit crazy. Now, some liberties with the text and some of the things they changed I have an issue with, but again, I'm not a Gatsby worshiper. This was a good, solid film, carried by an extremely good performance, and I think you should check it out. At number 6, The Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug. A sequel and the second part of a trilogy should ramp the tension up and make the stakes much higher. This movie did that from the beginning. You see how the ring is already beginning to affect Bilbo and his actions. He's already turning into a monster and he knows it, but he can't let go of it. And while his story is very heavy in the beginning, then takes a little break and comes back at the end, his performance is great and you get the character arc. And you do have a larger story by bringing in the elves, even if a lot of the stuff didn't actually happen in the book, and there's a new character, which a lot of people raved about, but I thought she was awesome in this role. The action is very exciting, even when you don't think it should. I mean, a barrel ride, it sounds like something very cartoonish, but in this movie, it's anything but. The enemies grow in number and in size, and speaking of which, we have the Great Smaug. Now, a good movie is only as good as its villain, and with Smaug, it does not disappoint. His first appearance is built up so well, and when you reveal the size and majesty of this beast, you really feel like Bilbo, like you are in for something that you are not prepared for. The voice carries so much malice, greed, anger, but also someone very, very intelligent, and also kind of has his own sense of humor. And at the end of the movie, you really feel ready for the next part and the final chapter. You really feel like we're in deep trouble. At number 5, The Conjuring. Pretty much every horror movie is compared to The Exorcist, but The Conjuring actually deserves it. They create a supernatural world that is very believable and actually feels very scientific, allowing you to suspend your disbelief easily for a very harrowing ride. Through likable characters, great cinematography, and the power of your imagination, you find yourself afraid of the most simple things that easily follow you when you get home. The simple act of opening a door, the lights going out, strange noises. Did you ever think that you would be afraid of this sound? Well, anybody who's seen this movie would probably agree with me that that was one of the scariest moments. At number 4, Man of Steel. Yeah, hate mail, booing, I don't care. Listen, to me, this movie was awesome. Bear in mind, the definitive Superman to me was, is, and always will be the Christopher Reeve Superman. But I am still open to new interpretations. And this one was highly effective, imbued with high science fiction, more action than any other Superman movie, a really awesome score by Hans Zimmer, and a terrific cast. Before I get to Henry Cavill, let me say that the supporting cast really impressed me with their portrayal of three-dimensional characters who are all very, very strong, had purpose in the story, and each of them got a heroic moment. And then we have Henry Cavill as Superman, or Kal-El. Besides being in ridiculously great shape, the guy was very relatable, very human, but also had that epic quality. You understood his loneliness, his isolation, the way he felt about other people, the desire to do right and do good. This movie emphasized that the right decision is not always easy to figure out. There's been a lot of controversy over some of Superman's decisions in this movie, and you can argue that any one of them is a mistake. And that's kind of the point. That he's going to make mistakes. That his powers are as much a curse as they are a blessing. Well, that's what I got. I know a lot of other people accuse this movie of being sadistic and a big disaster spectacle, but to me, action is a physical dialogue, and if you pay attention to the action, you can see that a lot of conflict and a lot of character is expressed through the action. For instance, the battle in Smallville shows just how much Clark loves his mother. If I've gone on for a long time about this movie, it's only because I know that there are a lot of complaints and I want to make my reasons for choosing this movie very clear. And if you think that this actually should belong on my top 10 worst movies of 2013, well, all I have to say is wait until the sequel. There's a good chance that's going to be on my list whenever that movie comes out. At number 3, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. I'm not familiar with the books, maybe someday I'll read them, but the movies are excellent, and this is one of those sequels that is actually better than the original. This one really focuses on public image, the efforts to keep it, how stressful it is, how bad things are getting now in the government. You can see how each character is deeply affected by the events of the last movie, and if you thought the death of a certain character last movie was sad, in this one it's even worse. The 75th Hunger Games, which were built up so much, do not disappoint. It's extremely imaginative, and you feel like things are much harder than last time, which leads us to the reveal that a lot of people had a problem with. But to me, it's clear that Katniss Everdeen cannot keep a secret to save her life, and I kind of understand that while this move was risky, it does kind of make sense if you think about it. I can't really defend it without going into a longer rant than my Man of Steel conversation, but just know that I feel that the twist was justified, and it's got me very curious to see what the next movie is going to hold. At number 2, Gravity. A film should also be an experience, and the first 15 to maybe say a half an hour of this movie is an experience in and of itself. One of the few movies that was actually worth seeing in IMAX, so I hope they bring it back. I'm not a huge Sandra Bullock fan, but she was really good in this movie. You sympathized with her, you were able to get in her point of view, and you really rooted for her to survive. George Clooney, some people have accused him of being a little bit too charming in this movie, and I kind of agree with that. It feels like if someone told him the universe was about to blow up, he'd still be calm and collected. If there's any legitimate complaint about this movie, it might be that it's a little unrealistic in how many things could possibly go wrong in one space mission. You almost expect that when she actually does crash land on Earth, she'll land in a volcano. Overall, this film was funny at times, it was dramatic many times, and it was extremely scary. I wouldn't be surprised if nobody goes up on a NASA mission in a while after watching this movie. And the number 1 film that I saw from 2013 was Saving Mr. Banks. I don't know why, but it seems like there's a common theme to the movies that are on my list, and that theme is dream versus reality. And in this movie, that relationship, that conflict, is extraordinary. You have Walt Disney, who's all about fairy tales and make-believe and making things the way that they should be. Then you have P.L. Travers, who wants everything to be presented the way it is. Wants kids to know the harsh reality of the world and not try to lie to them and say that everything's going to be okay in the end. I think that Emma Thompson was essential to this movie because in any other situation, P.L. Travers could seem like a very uncompromising, mean woman that you can't possibly root for, but you see everything from her perspective. But the real surprise to me was Tom Hanks' Walt Disney. I was really worried that this was going to be the kind of movie where they're like, oh, look how rotten the real Disney was. You have no idea just how mean he was. You think that he was a saint? No, we're gonna show you the nitty-gritty details. And the reason that annoys me is not because I don't want to think of Disney that way, it's because we all know who Disney was. We all know what he was really like. And we don't need a movie to insult us by suggesting that we don't already know all the bad things about him. They hinted at the fact that he always gets what he wants. They hinted at the fact that he sometimes lies to other people. And hinting at it is all you really need to do. The movie will make you laugh and make you cry for real. And the ending will actually manage to recapture that warm, fuzzy feeling that you used to get when you watched Disney movies, if you were like me and are old enough to remember that time. So those are my choices for the top 10 best movies of 2013. Love them or hate them, I want to hear about it.